10 of the most based Christians after the apostles. Numbers 10 through 9 are in no particular order. Now, number 10, we have St. Lawrence, or Lawrence if you prefer, because he doesn't have any other names, it's literally just Lawrence. Back in 258 AD, these guys, the Romans, went up to this guy who is a Roman deacon, named Lawrence, obviously, who's in charge of material goods and alms for the poor. Now, they basically told him to run them pockets, and he was like, "We broke, twin." And they were like, "Why?" And he brought out all the poor people, and he was like, "We gave the money to these guys already." And the Romans really didn't like that. So they grabbed Lawrence, and then they grabbed a hot grill and lit a fire under it, and then they threw him on that grill and lit him on fire. Now, allegedly, while he was on fire, he turned to the Roman and he said, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Coming in at number 9, we have Pope Leo. Not this Pope Leo, this Pope Leo. Pope Leo the First. Back in 452 AD, this guy, Attila the Hun, is going absolutely crazy rampaging through Europe, and eventually he gets to Rome. So Pope Leo just walks out, and he literally just walked out to meet him, completely unarmed, and he was like, "Please go away." And since this guy had just attacked Rome, and then he just died right after he attacked it, Attila kind of gets scared, and he's like, "Okay," and then he just leaves. Number 8, we have Sir Christopher Lee. Other than being in not one, but 2 of the greatest movie franchises of all time, and also being a bunch of other really iconic characters, he was also in so many movies it took me 6 screenshots to include them all in this video. After being well into his late 80s, he released not 1, but 2 heavy metal albums, and the latter he released when he was 91 years old. And this makes him officially the oldest metalhead of all time. One time he got asked what his opinion on the occult was, and he replied that he had met Satanists, but he had never been involved, and he warned people to never get involved because you will not only lose your mind, but also your soul. Number 7, we have Constantine the 11th. Back in 1453 AD, the once mighty Roman Empire has been reduced to this, and it's centered around the city of Constantinople, or Istanbul if you're Turkish. Now, this guy, Mehmed II, decides he wants to take the city, so the Byzantine people all start running away. But not this guy. When Mehmed asks him if he wants to just leave the city and have some other places in return, he didn't even reply. So don't worry, twin, you're not the only one who gets left on red. Instead of surrender, Constantine looked at the invading horde, dropped one of the most bomb quotes in the history of all quotes, and rushed into oblivion. Now, coming in at number 6, we have Fyodor Dostoevsky. Born in 1821 in Tsarist Russia, he's a writer, and then in 1840, he joined a political group called the Petrashevsky Circle. And in 1848, Dostoevsky starts to make friends with some of the more radical members of this group over the idea that serfdom is low-key kind of lame. And if you don't know what serfdom is, it's basically Russian quasi-slavery. So in 1849, Tsar Nicholas I sees this idea as getting more popular, and he kind of gets scared because he thinks it's going to cause a revolution. So he sends Dostoevsky and his friends to Siberia, to a Russian labor camp, to get those pesky radicalist ideas out of his head. But it doesn't work, and in 1854, when Dostoevsky is finally free, he goes back to writing books. He writes a lot of books. Like, that's not even all of them. And he actually writes one of the greatest books of all time, and he becomes somewhat of a celebrity. So eventually he meets Tsar Alexander II, who not only has a sick mustache, but he's also the son of this guy, who is the guy who put him in jail. And it's due to this fact, and also the fact that Alex's mustache is way better than Nick's mustache, that Tsar Alex brutally mogs Tsar Nick. Now, back to Fyodor. Literally everything he ever wrote revolved around his Orthodox Christian values. And one time he got asked if Christianity was wrong, what would he do? And he responded that if someone proved to me that Christ is outside the truth, and that in reality the truth were outside of Christ, then I should prefer to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. So that's why he's on this list. Coming in at number 5, we actually have Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. Now, it's pretty obvious why he's on this list. You can't really have this kind of list without putting this guy on it. Basically, at 13, his dad dies. I mean, whenever he's 13, his dad dies, not when his dad's 13, obviously. He basically goes full Batman mode and becomes one of the greatest kings that medieval Jerusalem has ever had. Pretty much the greatest, and successfully defends it from the rising threat of the Seljuk Turks. He's going toe-to-toe with these guys in battle and winning. Like, he's literally in the battles, winning, until the day he dies. And he did all of this while having leprosy, which is a skin disease that causes lesions and numbness and muscle weakness. And it was incurable until 1980. Now, eventually he dies and the Seljuk Turks steamroll through Jerusalem, and that's pretty sad, but anyways, number 4, we've got Jan Hus. Now, if you don't know who Jan Hus is, some random guy on YouTube made a really cool video about him, and you should totally go watch it after you finish this one. But basically, Jan Hus doesn't like simony, which is the buying and selling of church offices, and it's named after a guy in the Bible named Simon. Absenteeism, he also didn't like that thing. It's basically whenever a guy lives over here in France and he gets appointed to a church office over here in Chiesenstein, even though he's literally never been to Germany in his life. He also didn't like indulgences, which is basically, you're all going to purgatory for 1 billion years. Oh no, what should we do? Start running them pockets. And he also believed in a non-violent church, which Rome didn't like. So they went over to the Holy Roman Emperor, and together they burnt Jan Hus at the stake. Coming in at number 3, we're going to have Matthew Ayariga. And about 11 years ago in Sirte, Libya, some guys were driving on their way to work when they get stopped by some Islamic State goons. And they were given a chance to renounce their Christianity and submit to Islam, but they didn't do that. So they get lined up on the beach and then they get beheaded. Now, why does Matthew stand out? Well, reportedly Matthew was not a Christian, but when the ISIS members asked him, "Who is your God?" and this is his one chance to tell them he isn't a Christian and live, he responded that their God is my God, reportedly, converting on the spot, which was an absolute death sentence. So that's why he's on this list and why he stands out. Coming in at number 2, we have William Tyndale. Now, pop quiz. What language do you speak? Because if it's the language that comes from here, and I'm assuming it is, because how else are you understanding me? And assuming you read your Bible, like you should, you owe this guy a huge thank you. Because back in England, at the time of Tyndale, English Bibles weren't a thing. And owning an English translation of the Bible was usually considered lollardy, which is a crime named after the Lollards, and it was punishable by death. Tyndale doesn't really care about this because he's just like that, and he understands the importance of having a Bible that's written in the common language and accessible to everybody. So he gets straight to work and he translates the entire New Testament into English, as well as the Genesis through Deuteronomy books and the historical books. Oh yeah, and he also denounced prayer to saints. Basically, he made these guys really angry, which is just typical during this time. So they call him a heretic, then they grab him, then they grab a stake and some ropes, and you already know what's coming next. So yeah, coming in at number 1, and the best Christian after the time of the apostles is Jesus Christ. Hey, that's no fair. He's in the Bible. Correct. But he's also the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. He was before the time of the apostles, he was at the time of the apostles, and he is after the time of the apostles. So, checkmate, liberals. Jesus Christ is still number 1. End video.